don't have to bring even one into the next sprint, but there might be one, we're creating space that there might be one that suddenly becomes a clear priority that we want to bring in. So it's optional rather than mandatory is the way I think most teams should look at action items.
Yeah, I think that sounds good. Sounds really good to me.
Okay, cool. So then maybe let me just jump into facilitating, or does that work for you, Bear? I know there's only a few of us, but we still have about 45 minutes, and I think we can actually do something useful in this time.
Yeah, let's go for it. Yeah, you can take it, Tom.
Okay, cool. So I guess maybe the purpose then today is really going to be looking at our Scrum process. We know that there are certainly challenges because sometimes it feels very slow and not the best or optimal use of our time. So let me just bring into context, especially for anyone else who's recently on vacation. We're talking really about the Scrum process, which is the events. So our sprint planning session, the duration of the sprint events, the 2-week period, the cadence of Scrum of each sprint. We could think about the review process, this process itself. I'm sorry, the retrospective itself. One of the things that you mentioned, Bear, is the praise in the beginning takes a lot of time, and then we run out of time. I think that's actually a really good thing to add to the what isn't working about Scrum. And in the retro process, we carve out 10, 15 minutes for praise. It was an idea. It was sort of a suggestion that we do that, and we tried it, but it's totally okay for us to say we tried it and it didn't work. And maybe we're not going to keep doing that. And this is where this should really surface itself. And then the other thing with this Scrum process is, of course, there's a review. And we're not doing reviews anymore. So that's maybe something that I would add to the what isn't working. And then we could think about what that could look like in our ideas for actions. And then I hope I will leave some space for us to really talk about those actions too. All right. So if everyone's in, let's see if I can set a timer. It looks like I can. I will set a timer for 3 minutes. I'm playing acoustic ambience because that was default. And think about what is working for Scrum right now. And I'm going to mute myself while everyone gets started. Sorry, I was on mute. I was just saying I could use a few more minutes, so I did another 3 minutes. Hope that's okay. Okay, cool. And maybe we'll go to what isn't working about Scrum. Actually, maybe we take a minute and Gideon, can I just ask you to read through the what is working about Scrum?
Of course. Okay, so first one, having a repeatable pattern of planning and retrospective is beneficial for team cohesion. Keeping us focused on time-bound deliverables is valuable. The Scrum process has been a useful tool in keeping individual work aligned with longer-term goals in the TEC. I enjoy retro calls, and I think they can be really helpful, but we do need to adjust their format. The overall Scrum process has brought more structure and an actual working cadence to the team. Tracking in Notion seems to be working fairly well. We have inconsistencies in our usage, but generally it has been a net positive. The formula of planning, retro, review, and daily stand-ups is very powerful when it is working, but as some fall off the wayside if the efficacy diminishes. The stand-ups, for example, worked great as long as it was being done by everyone. I appreciate how we adjusted it to be less than daily. The sprint board is one of the ways that we are keeping transparency about work being done, though only internally since the sprint board is not public, and accountability to the rest of the team. This doesn't mean that this is the only or best way to do it, just that this is the only way we are doing it today. Sprint planning gives everyone the opportunity to be in sync with the rest of the team, specifically talk about what you are working on and hearing about what the rest of the team is doing. The off-the-cuff discussions may be tangential to some work streams, but in the end, the team should be more cohesive as they are familiar with everyone else's work too. About cadence, there really is no perfect answer. For fast-moving teams, there with a lot of context change, 2 weeks feels optimal. But for slower working teams and work that is more deep thinking and time consuming, longer cadence makes a lot more sense. The retro process regularly identifies areas for improvement, and it's nice to celebrate what's working.
Cool. Bear, can I ask you just to share 30 seconds to a minute your thoughts on what's working? Any of these particularly resonate with you, or do you want to share anything in addition?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I really liked this one that talks more about the sprint board. Being also really helpful to keep transparency and accountability between all the work that we are all doing. Is probably one of the few kind of like internal mechanisms that we have to keep accountable with each other. So I think that's a really important quality that the Scrum process has. I also really share this idea that we are probably missing this part of the review to be able to complete kind of like the whole cycle. But overall, I think it has bring a lot of structure and a lot of it has provided us the ability to organize ourselves better in a way in which we were not able to do so before. So I think just that it was just a good sign to have the Scrum process in place for the team. So yeah.
Cool. And what about you, Nate? I'm going to set a timer just so we make sure we have time to do everything. But if you run over it, you can run over it.
No worries. Yeah, I was going to say that I think the biggest benefit has been the kind of consistency and the pattern of getting together, having these sprint planning and retrospective. Of course, being on the same page, but being transparent about it with both. Having this kind of public element where people can come join and they know where to come join if they want to contribute to participate in the internal activities of the TEC, but also having this kind of like internal board where we keep track and keep each other accountable. I think this is a really good process in making sure that we have this, consistent every 2 weeks, which is really nice. I like that cadence. However, with certain teams, we may want longer ones, but I do think the cadence is really important for keeping that kind of cohesion for the community. And I'll pass it over to you, Gideon.
Thanks, Nate. Yeah, so I think having time-bound organizational structure for syncing on work is really important. I think it's essential. And I want to highlight the thing that Nate just said, which is there's something about knowing that in a week or so you're going to be in front of your peers and saying whether or not you finished something that is motivating. And I think it's good for accountability in a non-hierarchical group like this.
Cool. And I'll go too. I will say pretty much the same. I mean, I think I mostly wrote my thoughts down, but I just really love how when Scrum works, it really, really works. So without further ado, I think we just jump into the next question or the next reflection period, which is really what isn't working about Scrum. I think we all know that there are pieces that aren't working. We felt them. But I'll put a timer for 4 minutes and let's put those on the board. No, I don't know if anyone else could use a few minutes, but I think I could. So I'm gonna add 3 more minutes to the timer. Maybe Nate, would you mind reading out the what could be done better section?
Yeah, sure. So at the top, ownership empowerment to participate in the planning process. I have a hard time articulating what that means, but I'll go over that in a second. Notion is not very accessible to many, but what software is. For us internally, we've learned to use it well. Scrum starts to fall apart when the number of active participants drops below some number. The overhead becomes too much. It's like we need some process for adjusting the size of that changes over time. That's actually a really good observation. I like that. We still need more time to talk about specific topics, need to revisit the call structure and maybe add some more calls. It feels to me that we are still missing the medium gear in regards to planning. We are getting better at defining high level priorities from one side and day to day tasks on the other, but we are still missing that middle part. Maybe this middle part is one that needs to happen on a monthly cadence. Isolated planning roles have provided clear boundaries, but it also has provided us with no incentive to collaborate with one another on tasks, understand each other's capacities/needs. Recurring tasks got in the way for understanding the purpose of 1 week sprint versus another. When things are repetitive, they become less interesting and leads to less engagement and participation. For sprint planning, I think we need to give it as much time as it takes, but no longer. By that, I mean focusing on each work stream intently, but always making sure that we are in planning mode and not solution mode. Occasionally, this may happen, of course. This main purpose of the sprint can be transparency and accountability during the planning. We never really nailed the planning for sprints. There were many sprints where it felt like we went went in not really knowing what the priority was. In contrast, during the TEGR rounds, that was less of an issue. I really like the stand-ups because it's really easy, low effort, but really effective way to bring another layer of accountability to the team. We just need to think about ways to improve it. Let's face it, the sprint board is updated at the beginning and end of the sprint. It would be best if it was updated more frequently, but working with what we are actually doing, we can say that it's okay. The stand-up really is a pain for most people. It is the thing that slips the fastest, keeping track of what we are doing and then reporting it to the DM group. That said, I can say having the visibility into the work of the team makes me a better contributor to the team. Once a week, twice a week seemed to be a cadence we were all able to achieve. Also, the tracker kept us accountable. I would keep doing that. It's tough to expect people who aren't close to the priorities to come up with tasks for themselves on the spot in planning calls. It's also kind of not fair that and can lead to bad use of resources. Stand-ups were extremely beneficial for my personal accountability, but there seemed to be a lack of actionable purpose for them outside of sharing recurring tasks, and there was not really a way to verify these activities actually happened. We aren't doing a review. The point of the event is to show the work we've done. There are a couple of different ways we can decide to do this, but it might be worth reintroducing the end of sprint accomplishments piece. We need to have a better use of Notion as a tool. It has lots of functionalities that could help us out, but we need to find a way that make it easier for everyone to use. Sprint planning sessions feel too long just to hear others' tasks. We could probably include review as part of this call.
Cool, that was a lot. I find myself thinking deeply about a lot of these. Shall we go through and discuss which one of these really resonate with you? Maybe I'll pass to Bear to get us started. I'll set a timer for a minute. I think we have time.
Oh, yeah, that was a good one. Yeah, I think a lot of them really resonated with me. I mean, probably for me, the ones I included had to do with like time for us to be able to talk about specific things. So kind of like revisiting our call structure and not going back to the old structure that we had with tons of calls all the time. But yes, I think with a couple more, we could find that time to be able to talk about all things that we need to talk about. And the other thing is this idea of the medium gear. I feel that, and it's also related with the call structure in a way. I think I feel like if we were to probably keep the 2-week sprints, but also try to include maybe one monthly call that it's kind of like this medium gear, like project planning call, or I don't know how would we call it. That could help us out to better kind of like plan out things together in a more regular cadence. But also, yeah, I don't know. It's probably hard for me to explain still, but that's the idea, just for us to get better at the planning at the medium level of things. Yeah, those I would say those two things for now.
How about you, Nate?
Yeah, after reading all of these, there's several of them that point out to me, but kind of in summation of what I've read is that it seems that we kind of, with the sprint process, we mix the planning, the accountability, and the review, and we kind of mesh them into these combined processes, and maybe it could be beneficial to actually separate these processes altogether. One of the things that I keep coming back to, and maybe this is something that you've had a lot of experience with this, Tam, within the sprint planning process, is that the empowerment of people participating. I think we have isolated roles in a lot of ways, and this has been kind of one of the things that I've noticed is that if I come to sprint planning and I share my tasks, no one really cares about my tasks other than myself. There's no kind of cross pollination between people. There's no kind of it doesn't encourage collaboration because we are all doing our own thing, and mostly people care about what they're doing and not really about what others are doing. They might hear it, but there's not really a way to integrate this kind of cross pollination between people, and that's something that I think it kind of discourages people from actually going ahead and putting plans beforehand and actually going through the review process. kind of in a diligent way. But yeah, I think there's a lot of things, the accountability stuff that we have mixed in that it could be kind of independent. I have more to say, but I'll pass it for right now. Sorry.
I mean, yeah, I mean, you can say more.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess the big thing I'm just trying to figure out how to like exactly how to say it. It's just the even like the stand-ups, for example. Um, uh, they're a really great way to share information with each other about what we're doing. And even the task like the tracker that you put up there, it's a really good way to keep people accountable for themselves. But there's no real consequence. There's no way to verify these tasks. There's no way to go through and make sure that we're all on the same page. And I think that has a lot to do with that kind of isolation, to where it's just like, Inti's doing his work and Bear's doing his work and I'm doing my work and Gideon's doing his work. There's not really any way for us to kind of input on each other's work, or have kind of that review process where we're actually having that second layer of accountability, where we're saying, oh yeah, I know this is happening because, well, I was actually participating in it. And I understand that Gideon is at capacity right now, or Inti is struggling with this grant round because there's so much work to do. But I have very little to go on outside of the tasks that are in the sprint planning and what's been stated in the stand up. And so I think there's it's just the connection between the tasks and the roles that we have is one thing that just popped out to me for this past year.
I'd be interested if you have a way to propose some sort of solution for that. It's one of the challenges of remote teams. We're not like, hey, you want to walk downstairs and get a coffee together, or we're not sitting in the lunchroom together, and we're not. So it's kind of the sprint board and those DM group with the daily stand-up that we have. That's, unless you reach out to somebody individually and ask them, hey, Gideon, I noticed that have a lot on your plate. Is there anything I could help you with? So a lot of it is like, that's kind of the mediums that we have being a distributed remote team. And so I'd be interested in hearing if you had any other solution you could propose, other than, when you are working in an office with each other, you cross into each other all the time in the office. So there's always, you see each other physically, you can see if somebody's stressed or relaxed, so there's a lot more, what could I say, information that's passing. Then we really don't have that information. So we develop these ways to.
Yeah, I guess my own comment would be that having dedicated time for these types of things, to where it's more of a group process where we discuss it. And I think the sprints, like even like the what went well in the sprint retrospective, like we mix things up with like praise versus actually focusing on what happened with the process. I think these things get mixed up together, and so having kind of like a dedicated time for specifically focused conversations might be beneficial.
Basically what Bear said earlier about like looking at our meetings, and if we have the right meetings for the right pieces of what we need done, for the right purposes. Better word. Gideon, is that right, Nate? First of all, I want to make sure I capture that.
Yeah, that is correct. I just think that when we combine things, we start to get sidetracked and we lose the purpose of that particular call. And so I think that is correct.
Okay.
Just having independent calls that are focused on something that is, we're focusing strictly on accountability. What did you do? Here's what you did. Here's how we did it. Okay. Here's the planning. What do you have planned for this time? What can we, that way.
Yeah, that's actually kind of a little of my intent in this one here for sprint planning. I think that we should give sprint as much time as it takes, but I think if we have like 4 to 5 people, I don't think we need 2 hours. I think we can actually focus very quickly on what people are working on, raise any issues, maybe, address any blockers, or put time in a calendar to address blockers at a different time. It feels like we should be able to go through this a lot faster than we have. And maybe that's a part of it, that we are conflating different purposes into particular meetings, because it's the time we have together, right? So it's sort of like you want to You want to use the time that we have everyone on the call together. Okay, but let me pass to Gideon to share your thoughts about what could be done better.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. I think that what you're honing in on, both of you are honing in on, is really important. And yeah, it just feels like we're lacking other spaces to do kind of like brainstorming, problem solving, and what's the most efficient way of doing that. My general comment would be related to that middle gear, and I feel like it would be helpful for us to distinguish kind of where we are in execution mode. So the times where sprint just felt like the best to me was when we were doing the grant rounds. Like we kind of knew what we were doing, and we didn't have to spend, like the need for planning was not super intense. The times where we spun, I feel like, is when we just didn't have anything to do. Like we hadn't like figured out what was next, and so it seems to me like it's worth distinguishing between those different cadences and the kind of like there's some difference there. I can't quite articulate it yet, but I think with a little bit of thinking we could figure out what those differences are and then adjust accordingly.
Yeah, I really agree with that too. I'm gonna give myself a minute too, although I've spoken too much already, maybe. But I would say I really like this missing the medium gear. It does feel true, but a little of it also feels more like, I don't know how to say this. I think we've experimented with this idea of everyone comes and says the work that you are going to be doing. That was sort of a carryover from when we had all the working groups and had responsible leads for each working group. And now it does feel unfair to have a contributor who wants to contribute, but really doesn't know how to come up with what they can execute on. And is sort of looking to be guided or being told what they can execute on, what's needed to come to a sprint planning with what they need. So it does feel like there's really a space for a coordinator role, a program manager role to help keep this cohesive. And when there is a contributor who isn't really sure how they can contribute, to sort of be responsible to help allocate work to that group. And I think that's maybe what is certainly going to be missing without NT here now. And was maybe even missing a little bit before, which is why I think a lot of the contributors have sort of peeled off. It's not easy to, it takes a lot of time to evaluate what the TEC is doing and then figure out how you can contribute. And I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing. I also think having a very lean focused team might be a good I don't know, a good, what's the word? Way to move forward in the TEC, at least in this short term. So maybe I'm just going to open up the floor to actions that can improve the Scrum rather than take a few minutes and write things down, unless, of course, you want to write things down. But I think a lot of them has come up from what isn't working with Scrum. So this one here, add a capacity stress measure to the stand-up posts. Oh, that's an interesting idea. Yeah, like, how am I feeling? Yeah, I like that one a lot, actually. And then this is just me putting in what was already discussed about reviewing the calls. Does anyone else want to just talk through and I can capture on a note or write through? I'll go around the room, actually, because we have only a couple of minutes left. From what we've discussed on what isn't working about Scrum, you want to do some free-form brainstorming on what actions we can take to improve? And I'll pass to you, Bear, to go first.
Yeah, so because I brought up this idea of the call structure, I actually do have a kind of like a proposal, an initial proposal in terms of this structure, at least in a high level way. I think that, if we think about the coordination team, we can think about 4 different areas that takes care of. One of them being kind of like the program side of things and the operational side of things with all the grants and all that work. And usually we talk about that during the team call that happens every other week when there's no sprint planning. I think we have that call to talk about that. Then we have communications as this second area. We have a call every Monday to talk about that. So I would like to propose or to suggest that we introduce 2 more calls, one for finance and one to talk about things related with people, so like HR stuff, people stuff. And I'm thinking that maybe to begin with, these 2 calls could happen once a month. So having maybe one happening, how you say, like at the beginning of the month, and the other one like 2 weeks within the month, something like that. And I think those 2 meetings could provide us with more valuable time to talk about more specific things. And that way we would cover like these 4 areas, having a designated time and space to talk about related things. And then maybe this has more to do with the actual sprint planning cycle, but maybe it also makes sense again having this monthly call at the beginning of the month, where we can all be together and think about all the different initiatives, look at for example, the funding proposal that we currently have in place, and make sure that we are on the right track in terms of this middle gear that we're all talking about, and be able to do that again on a call, on a monthly cadence, and then just continue with the 2-week sprints as a more specific, for more specific type of work and tasks. So that's kind of like the type of structure for calls that I've been thinking about. So I just put it there on the table.
Cool. I'd love to see that written down. I'm sure you have it written down already, but maybe this is something that we can, where is the right place for us even to have that discussion? I feel like that's a TECT meeting discussion, or maybe we do this async. Maybe we do it in a team chat somewhere. One of the things that, in my experience, I found is it's kind of hard with a very small team, especially like ours, to sequester certain topics to certain, point times. I find if a group gets together and all the relevant parties are present to discuss a topic that all of their opinions are needed on, then time just gets hijacked for that. So it might be difficult to be like, oh, we only talk about finance on the first Thursday of the month. Oh, but we talk about hiring on the third Thursday. Just throwing that out there, that can be difficult to manage. Also, yeah. But let's make a proposal and change our calendar. It's the beginning of the year. What a great time to start something new. Gideon, do you want to share your thoughts about what we've discussed and maybe what some actions we can think about taking or take to improve Scrum?
Yeah. And also, I just want to say, Tam, you're such a good facilitator. You bring like positive energy into the whole process. I love it. So I would say 2 things. One, it feels like we're kind of low on people right now, and that will that's going to change as we hire, and so then all of this stuff will become a lot more relevant again. But that's worth noting. And then the second thing is on the kind of the medium gear of planning. Basically what was happening up until like July, August was that NT and I would kind of like try to work that out and with this document, and that's all shifting over to TCAN now. And so I think Barry, you've been doing a great job of driving issue by issue, kind of helping us to tackle essentially planning, And so I think there's that medium gear, I think, has something to do with a connection between TCAN and the group of people who are coordinating the actual work and figuring out how to mesh those, so that those plans, those ideas are reality checked with the coordination team. And maybe this is like opening up a one TCAN call a month. We've talked about this in the past, for that kind of planning process or something like that. But it feels like the medium gear is about the coming together of TCAN and the coordination team.
That's super interesting. Yeah. Yeah, and it's, a little of this is like we're doing this retrospective at a time where we are in the process of transition. like deep in the process of transition. So it makes a lot of sense for us to, I think it's a great time for us to change up everything. I mean, all the things are not working great. There's no reason for us to hold on to them. And in the last minute and a half, Nate, you haven't shared yet, right?
Yeah, so I got two things that I think are a priority in my opinion is the sprint planning process. I think is kind of the foundation for making sure the Scrum goes well. And everybody has a different facilitation method, and I think that what we choose as our facilitation method is really, really important. I feel like we've gone through this process of like, hey, share your tasks that you've put up, go over a little bit, and then move on to the next person, review what you did, what's in the icebox, so on and so forth. But I think having kind of a more focused process where we kind of all kind of dive in to each other's work, making sure that we're collaboratively planning tasks with each other. Everybody understands during that sprint planning. I mean, we have 2 hours. I think that is more than enough time to actually go into each other's work for that particular sprint to actually create a process that allows people to understand everybody's work and how they can input, understand capacities right at the beginning of each sprint. And so I think a lot of it has to do with the initial implementation of the facilitation process for the sprint planning. And I think that's something that if we can get down right away, then it'll carry on to the following sprints. The second thing is the purpose of the sprints. I know we have a lot of recurring tasks within these roles, but understanding what our goal is for that particular month or that medium term, and being able to have everybody on the same page, knowing that their work is gearing up towards that particular goal or that purpose is something that we should definitely incorporate within the planning process that I feel like we've missed out on in the past sprints.
So something like, we used to have the sprint goal.
Yeah, just understanding the purpose of the sprint as a group, so to what we're all kind of working towards. So if there's like if we have a grant round, like we need to all be preparing for that and making sure that we have elements within our work that are geared towards accomplishing that ultimate goal for the month or longer term.
Cool. Okay, thanks for that. We are a little bit over the top of the hour. I would say two things. Maybe this add capacity for stretch measure for stand-up post. I'm happy to take that on myself and add that, and maybe also kick off the stand-ups again. I'm not sure. I know I haven't been doing them probably during this vacation period. There wasn't really much point in doing them. So maybe I'll kick those off again. And Bear, you have a proposal for the call review. I think a little bit we'll see the way the rest unfolds. Maybe tomorrow in our sprint planning, we could figure out how we want to facilitate it. Yeah, Bear, if it's helpful, I'm happy to volunteer to do that. But I'm also happy to just participate. I'll leave that up to you.
No, that'd be really awesome, Tam. Yeah, I think you're fantastic at this work of facilitating. So yeah, I appreciate that.
Cool. All right, cool. Well, I'll see everyone tomorrow.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Tam.
My pleasure, Bear.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.